Hey, what's up everyone? Foxy here, and today we're going to be doing an update to my Righteous Fire build guide where we use Aura of Decay and Downfall of the Righteous to have a giant circle of death around us and just run through enemies. I actually leveled with the previous guide that I showed. It worked really well, right up to about 90 and the empowered monoliths, but then started to have survivability issues. So I wanted to update that and also mainly to show how we can push corruption with this build. We're a little bit at the end to explain where I will take this build later if people want me to do that. So first of all, we look at Wandering Spirits. Now, Wandering Spirits, surprisingly, is our nuke button. It's where we launch at the rares and the bosses, and it does a ton of damage. The biggest changes I did to this build here is I added in Locus Mortis, which is just a free 30% more, 15% more damage, which is great. I took a few points out of Reap the Damned to get there, and I also increased the cooldown recovery because of how powerful this ability now is with the way I built it. This tree is just lots of pew of poison to add the stacks. Everyone likes that, and a little bit of spirit duration as well. For those using the earlier build guide, I would suggest you put points in here and here where you can, and take points out of here until you have the spare points. Moving on to Chthonic Fissure. So here, what we're doing with Chthonic Fissure is using the Chaotic Rupture and the Stygian Current to use our Chaos Bolt tree later to just lots of Chaos Bolts, lots of damage. But also we're applying the Acid Skin Curse in the tree as well, which is big. More curses, more fun. But the biggest changes I made here to the build is I stacked Chronicles of Ruin because we want the Torment duration for the Overload, which I'll go into later on the passive tree, but also because it's going to extend our poison damage, which is a huge multiplier for poison. We also added a point here in Tomb Gorger. If you have spare points, I just keep putting more points into this. This is a really powerful node. We had to use these to navigate, but these are good because they give us more torment spread. And I've also had to drop a point in these two because I just had too many mana issues due to how hungry the Chaos Bolt tree is, which is why I've put stacks in here. I would recommend, if you have spare points, start stacking it in Eradication and Tomb Gorger. This you could actually potentially drop, and the reason I've got this here is it's kind of nice to spread the torment to other spirits, but I also plan, and I'll get into this later in the guide, to move over to a sort of a torment ailment part of this build and go heavily into necrotics resistant stacking. I'll explain that in a little bit later because it gets a little bit more complex, but for now this works really well. Transplant, pretty simple. We get some defenses along the top. We've got a bit of movement from the skill itself. We also bring in Bone Curse here on arrival, which is yet another curse that we're going to be using. And the biggest change to my previous guide is I just added in some bleed chance because we're going to start wanting to stack bleed for bleed overload as well. Nice and simple. Moving on to Chaos Bolts. So Chaos Bolts, this is super mana hungry over here, the Chthonic Aura and the Mana Anarchy, but it just massively increases our damage, so I've gone for it. If you're really struggling with mana, you can drop these nodes and stack them into Exalt and Misery and the Doom's Vindication, because they'll just stack naturally with what we're already doing, which is cursing, and they're also more multipliers, and more is better than increased. And we're also going to be doing Bleed, Ignite, and Damned, so, wow, my voice cracked, that's how impressive this node is. And we want to stack the Ignite chance as well. We're also yet another Bone Curse here just to make sure our Bone Curses never drop off. Nice and simple there. And then moving on to the actual Righteous Fire part of this build. So the biggest changes from the previous guide was I dropped a Carrion Poison and the Unending Sickness. I could not make it work. It just took so much need for reducing the damage taken over time. It meant I had to keep switching the Aura of Decay on and off. In the past I have used it. It didn't feel great on this build, so I got rid of it. So where did I put those points? I put the points into Absence of Life. This is just flat up more healing. We need it. It's good. And then more interestingly, I put the points into Vulnerability and Corruption to give us Poison Nova and to reduce the resistance, the poison resistance of our enemies, which actually translates to more damage anyway. If I was going to put more points into this, I'd start to go down this node so that our Aura Decay also has a bit of a ranged ability as well. Haven't got those points now, but if I were to, I'd probably start going down that route. Though it's really hard to level Aura Decay. You're pretty much going to have to put it as a legendary slam, basically, onto your relic. So that's the skills. Let's move on to the passive tree. Now, the biggest change between the early build and the mid build is we're going to start necrotic resistance stacking due to the barbute helmet. That will give us more wards per uncapped necrotic resistance, and we can actually scale that necrotic resistance as well in other areas of this build, which is really good. Therefore, I've stacked Forbidden Knowledge. Intelligence increases our spell damage. We get the necrotic resistance there. Reduce this a little bit to compensate. And that's pretty much the long and the short of what's changed here. We've got a little bit of spread poison here, more dam chance, necrotic damage. That's going to be good for our torment stacks. That's about it here. On the Lich Tree, I got rid of Desolation, put more points into intelligence, just flat spell damage is great. And also we need the mana regen to keep our bolts going. Bit of leech as well. Onto the Warlock Tree. Now this is the sexy tree, this is what we care about. So we're using Downfall of the Righteous. It's our second circle of death. So what we're going to use here is our Chains of Ruin and our Infernal Lash, not Internal Lash. That's me on a night out. We're going to basically get 2 of these overloads so that we can trigger the Downfall of the Righteous, which I believe does 600 fire and necrotic damage a second to enemies around it. And I've started to also increase just the duration on these stacks just to make life a bit easier. Increase damage, increase duration. Just helps with keeping the overloads going. And actually, interestingly, I've started to put points in here. It just increases your health, which is great, but also gives you more damage per ailment on you. Now you're going to have poison on you from Aura of Decay. You're going to have bleed on you from one of the nodes I'm going to show later. And you're also going to get various other ailments on you over time. It's just going to increase your damage here. And it's more damage, so that's even better. Basically, put these in just to keep ourselves alive a little bit. So a bit more armor. And more armor per curse. We're going to be doing all the curses in the world. We're going to also be using Wither and the curse Anguish, so even more curses. And again, less damage taken. And the biggest change I've really made since the early build is I've started putting points in here as well, just to help with our War Decay. And again, it scales with our necrotic resistance. So we're going to be stacking that. So that's going to be great. Moving on to the gear. So we're going to be using the Barbute helmet. This is a popular helmet used in a lot of Acolyte builds for pushing Corruption. It's good because we can get more ward per second per uncapped necrotic resistance, which also scales with various other things in this build. I'm at about 300+% necrotic resistance at this point, which is relatively easy to get with our passive tree and our gearing, but this can go a lot higher. It just gives us more defenses. It also gives us armor. So nice. On to Pels of Swine. For the LP, I've just put damage over time. Pretty easy to get. The reason this is good is Pels of Swine allows our bone curse that we're doing through Transplant and Chaos Bolts to also inflict Decrepify, which increases damage over time taken, which is huge for us. It also does a dot itself. And just as nice, it gives us some resistances, attributes, etc. But also it gives us ward per second for each curse affecting you. So as we get curses on ourselves, we'll also get more ward in that manner as well. The Rot Mind gives us a level 2 all our damage over time skills. I mentioned this in the earlier guide. I won't go into it too much, but this is everything but Aura of Decay. Also increases the base damage of the poison for damage over time spells, which is very, very good. We're using Woven Flesh to remove all our worries about critical strike hits to us. Just negates all of them. Gives us leech, gives us health. And I've stuck on Wandering Spirits. Because that's our powerhouse of ability, so +3 on there. But you can also put some, Chthonic Fissure would be nice, and Chaos Bolts, but Wandering Spirits is the OP one here. We got the Ladle. Ladle's big. It applies all manner of horribleness to the enemy, but also, more importantly, our spell damage stacks with the negative ailments on the enemy, which will be everything. It goes up to 8, but we'll always have at least 8 on our enemies. Also reduce the cost of spell skills. These rings haven't changed from the earlier guide. Gives us +1 to all poison spells. That's basically why we're using them. Everything else is meh. And then we stack increased damage over time. For the belt, we're going to be using Chains of Ulrios. I totally mispronounced that. Moving on. This one, just more necrotic resistance. Your potions grant ward instead of health. This is quite a good defensive buff. You just pop that as you're going into a big fight, and it tends to do the work for you. Flat damage increase. I put health on here and a bit of cold resistance because I was struggling for cold resistance. This build really doesn't give you a lot of cold resistance, so that's why I put that on there. It's a bit of a waste of an LP, but I couldn't find anywhere else to put it. Outcast boots, just lots of movement. Stack necrotic resistance, fill in your other resistance gaps. Vitality, just a bit of survivability. We use Eternal Gauntlets, again stacking necrotic resistance, intelligence and damage over time. and Downfall of the Righteous, which is why we want to trigger our overloads. Scales our curse damage, does lots of damage on itself, lots of damage over time, increase health, basically scales all the things we care about. So that's basically the gear. Onto our idols. So idols are a work in progress for me, but we kind of want to go for dot damage is king. If you can't get dot damage, go spell or poison damage. I got curse spell damage as well because that also scales with the Downfall of the Righteous. These are the most important ones. We want increased poison damage while Aura of Decay is active. It's always going to be active, so this is straight up flat increase in damage. To chance to apply poison hit while at low health is a bit rubbish. Feel free to change it. It's just what I've managed to find at the moment. The rest is just get damage, get ward, get health, get anything that keeps you alive and does more damage, basically. I mean, that summarizes all ARPGs though, let's be honest. Poison pen is useful. Try to get it where you can. I've also put a chance to bleed on because I want to get this bleed overload going, and our chance to bleed is relatively limited in this build, so I've started putting it into our idols. And then the little ones, we've got increased health regen. As I said, these are the idols I've got at the moment, so we can definitely do better. But you know, just some health regen, poison damage, damage over time. This increased necrotic damage works with our torment stacks, but again, poison would work. Again, increased damage over time. Bit of fire pen for ignite stacks and our ward per second as well. But again, this could be improved. Blessings wise, we want armor. Physical damage is a pain for us. We're having to be up close and personal with our Aura of Decay. So this allows us to stand near the enemies a bit more. We're going to use increased armor again to stack the armor further. Bit of lightning resistance, again, really hard to get those elemental resistances into this build, so I've had to use this. Chance to bleed on hit. This can be changed, but this is to trigger our overload. I can get poison, I can get ignite relatively easy. Bleed is harder, so I went for bleed. Void resistance just solves our void issue, and I'm not really going to go into these. These are all kind of pointless, so I'll just hover over them. Increased experience is big. Just get that. That's kind of always get that, really. It also stacks our favor as well. And the wand, the reason I've got that is because we really need to get this ladle off the exiles, and it's really hard to get. It took me a lot longer than usual to me to get this one. So that's basically it in a nutshell for our early corruption pushing. If this guide proves interesting to people and people want me to do a sort of high corruption guide, I just want to touch on a few things that I'm thinking of doing for that if I keep pushing this. One of the things I was thinking is basically to pivot into Twisted Ways, which naturally will work with the necrotic resistance we're already stacking to give us more damage multiplicatively. And the reason for this is basically we can already using dot damage in most of our builds. This is just going to give us a ton more dot damage, and we might pivot. I've said pivot way too many times. It's starting to sound like Roskella. Basically, we're going to start to stack necrotic resistance, stack the damage of torment, and we can potentially move some of the poison damage over to necrotic damage to benefit from that. So hopefully this has been useful. I want to keep it a bit shorter than the last guide, but if you've enjoyed this, please feel free to subscribe and like. I haven't got an outro, so this rambling monologue will have to do for now. Bye for now.